Going back to the book you were talking about, you were reading earlier, Traction, right? I've
Right.
loved that book. I've read it like 5 times. One of the biggest takeaways that I got from that book, there's a few things about labor and like org charts, like who to hire and their
Mhm.
relationship and stuff like that. But my biggest takeaway from that book is creating scorecards. Love scorecards. And what they advocate in that book is creating like kind of like a CEO scorecard. And like they basically say like every person in charge of a department should have one number they're responsible for. One number, one key number. There might be a couple other like secondary, tertiary numbers, but there's like one big number. Like what is the one number? Like a salesperson, it's revenue, clearly.
Yeah.
Right. Marketing person, it's leads. So like
Yeah.
production supervisor, maybe it's like customer satisfaction, like Google ratings or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like what are the one numbers in each of these departments that you could define? And then from the business operator standpoint, you can run those numbers and make sure that they're good. Hold your marketing guys accountable with the numbers. Make sure sales guys, they got their numbers. Like, so I think as you're scaling up, not only you need to train people, but you need to find ways to hold people accountable, and it
Yeah.
needs to be measurable. So you
Yeah.
got to have numbers. That's what KPIs is all about, right?
Yep.
Key
Can't
performance
be counted,
indicators.
please.
What are your KPIs that you track with your team?
Yeah, so obviously, I mean, you kind of touched on a few of them that are super important to me. But close rate is one of them ones that I love tracking just because I love sales. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? But I'm also tracking what our ROI is for each marketing source. So I want to see how many leads we got coming in. What are we converting those to estimates? What's our lead conversion rate? What is our sales on those lead sources? What is our sales rate on those lead sources? How much revenue are we producing each month? How much are we selling each month? What's our gross profit? So we track so much data, but like for me, like, yeah, and this goes a little bit back to the disc profile. I'm a D and a C, so I believe like I'm a driver. I'm very direct. I act on impulse, but I also am a C, so I am very analytical. So I take a lot of risks, but I back it up with my data.
Mm.
So like I have no problem with dumping more money into a marketing source if it's working. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And taking that risk that like, hey, it could drop off and we could lose some money there. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But like you said, you gotta have the data to back it up. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And there's got to be those KPIs, those numbers that you're tracking. And like my office manager, she sets all my appointments, so I'm consistently tracking with her. Hey, what's your lead conversion rate? How are things going? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Where do we need to improve with our salesperson? What's your close rate at? You know what I mean? And we have a way of keeping the what we're charging kind of the same. So and production manager, it's what's our gross profit at? You know what I mean? You control that and the salesperson control that together. If it
Yeah.
doesn't hit the mark, whose fault was it? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Was it more of a sales problem or was it a production problem? Was it
Hmm.
too much labor or was it too much materials? We track all of that to know
Hmm.
the answers to what problems we're having.
Yeah, I love that. Do you get most of those numbers from your CRM, or are they manually tracked?
So right now, a lot of it is actually manually tracked. Now, all
Okay.
our sales metrics is in Pain Scout. We're big fans of Pain Scout. But I actually had the idea because I wanted to get even more like in the weeds with tracking our marketing this year. So very, very beginning of the year, I had I work with the league business advisors and they've kind of taught me a lot about knowing my numbers and tracking my cash flow. That's another thing that I do with
Hmm.
Spin Center on a weekly basis is know exactly what my accurate bank balance is with all of our payables and receivables. But I had them build me out this spreadsheet so I can track all that information in real time. So my office manager, as she's setting the appointment, she's entering in the lead into that spreadsheet in our CRM,
Hmm.
but entering that into the spreadsheet, and then we check boxes of like, hey, did we do the appointment? Did we sell the job? How many times did we contacted them? What was the lead source and all that? And then it
Yeah,
pulls it
yeah,
up in a graph on a monthly basis and a cumulative basis so we can see all that data.
that's awesome. Yeah, and that's essentially like a scorecard, like what I was talking about from Traction.
Yeah.
That's really what that is.
Yeah.
It's like in a scorecard, the idea of it for anyone listening that doesn't know what that is, a book Traction talks about a system where there's some input numbers. Like if you think about, they use a baseball analogy. You think about like a baseball scorecard at the back of the baseball field. You've got innings, and
Yeah.
you got both teams, and they have runs and stuff like that, right? But then there's a total score. It summarizes it up at the top, right? And so that's the idea. Like you might have daily sales numbers and production numbers and lead numbers and all these other things, but you should have some sort of easy to understand graph or digits that give you the big picture of what's actually happening with, it's like the pulse of what's happening in your company.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Revenue,
well,
profit, other
yeah.
gross profit, all these other kind of numbers. Yeah.
And if things aren't going well, if you start diving into those numbers, you're going to find out why. You know what I mean? If you're not selling enough, you can dive into those numbers. Is it a sales problem? Is it a marketing problem? Or or
Mhm.
is it a simple lead conversion rate problem? Maybe
I
you have
know.
plenty of marketing and leads coming in, and your sales rate is great, but whoever's setting your appointments isn't calling the leads enough. You know what I mean? It could be something as simple as that.
Or you can listen to the phone call recordings and hear they're not saying the
Yeah,
scripts or doing the right things or saying the right thing. Yeah, all sorts of things
absolutely.
like that. I had a client one time. He was like, "Yeah, man, these Google ads are great, but I can't kind of get anyone to get an appointment." And we like spot checked his phone calls, and he's just being rude to every single person on the phone. I mean, just blatantly rude. And I'm like, "Yeah, no wonder.
Yeah, yeah,
This is not a marketing function, buddy. This is
yeah,
you being a prick on the phone to every person that calls you." He would treated everybody. It was like it was an inconvenience to have to pick up the
yeah,
phone. And
yeah.
dude, that's felt. That's not cool.
No,
No, I don't think anyone here listening to a podcast like this is going to be like that, because everyone here is going to want to grow. But the point is, sometimes like there's things in those numbers that we don't even realize. You know?
yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. And like sometimes it's hard to take an honest look at yourself to realize that you could be causing a problem. I'll give an example. Like we went, obviously big fans of BCA. We went to the big conference in February. I actually spoke on a sales panel, and I was coming off a phenomenal sales month. I sold
Hmm.
$240,000 in the month of February. I was feeling myself and had that panel and stuff like that. March, we completely dropped the ball.
Hmm.
I had a terrible close rate. And I finally had a call with someone who's in my network who also owns a painting business and has a really nice business, a really tight ship. And he basically like took a dive into my sales process, which it wasn't necessarily all my sales process. It was very little of that actually. We dug into what was going on personally. You know what I mean? And I found out that like a lot of my appointments, I was just kind of going through the motions. I was also like stressed and tired and not giving my best effort on the appointments.
Hmm.
So what I did is I took a lot from that 2 hour conversation with my friend of mine. And the next month, I actually raised my prices 15% just because, even though I was coming off of like a absolute historic low close rate for myself, I raised my prices 15%, and my sales rate went from in February it was like 45%. March it was all the way down to like 30%. And then April with the 15% increase, I was back at like 40%.
That's awesome. That's
So
awesome.
like sometimes you just got to take a real look at like what's going on and honest look at what's going on and realize like, hey, you might be part of the problem, but that means there's a
I
solution.
actually think that most of the time we are
Yeah.
the problem. You know what I mean? Like, and this is probably an honesty pill that I probably should have learned a decade sooner. But I think that like every time my business has a problem, it's me.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
sometimes like you might think your employee is a problem, but really it's you because you're not coaching or training them
I'm
enough.
not
You're not
coaching or
giving them the
training them. And
resources
so
them enough.
even if the employee I have in a place is absolutely at fault, I'm still responsible for putting that person there and not identifying and removing them.
Yeah.
Even if that's the thing, it's still
Yeah.
me. No matter what, you own the business. You are the business owner.
Yeah.
You are responsible. Um, it doesn't mean you're at fault at everything. Like,
Yeah.
the mistake could have been someone else's, but it is your responsibility for
Yeah.
everything that happens in
And
your business.
sometimes that person might just need a little additional coaching and then they're killing it afterwards. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Hey, if you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. If you're looking for help growing your contracting business, I invite you to join my free community. In there, we go live with amazing trainings, share resources and downloads, plus you get free help from me and from peers. That link is down below to join, and we'll see you in the next video.